Am I the a-hole for telling someone that I don't care about their trigger warnings? Now you think this may sound a bit ridiculous, but I assure you the further we read, the more things begin to make sense. So I'm a 15-year-old female, and I'm receiving a punishment at school for telling another kid that I don't really care if my scars trigger them. I was attacked by a dog when I was 7, and now have scars on my arm and face. I used to cover up by wearing hoodies and masks because I was insecure. Recently, I have started wearing less hoodies and more tank tops and t-shirts. But yesterday at school, some rando at my school came up to me and told me, "You should cover up, your scars really trigger me." I immediately got upset, which I guess he could tell due to my facial expression. I guess I was smiling a lot because nobody seemed to care about my scars. I told him that I wasn't going to cover up just because my scars trigger him, and if he doesn't want to see them, then maybe not to look at me. He then left, but today I was called into the office. The principal said I would be receiving an in-school suspension for this week due to making your peers and staff uncomfortable with your physical appearance. Like, what? I don't know if my principal is actually allowed to suspend me for this, and I feel super insecure again. Am I the a-hole for telling the kid I wasn't going to cover up? Now, in case you didn't think this was legitimate, the OP's made quite a few comments to help, verify some more things here. So I will admit that what I said to the kid was a bit more harsh than I said in the story because I was upset when he told me to cover up, and I said a few things that were not okay. And I did apologize to him, but what my principal said is true. And yes, both my parents are involved and are having a meeting with the school board tomorrow morning. So okay, we begin to grow some suspicion. Maybe there was more that occurred here than what the OP is saying. Was it really true that this is the only reason she's getting an in-school suspension? Was she actually making veiled threats towards him for making this comment? In regards to asking why the frick the bully kid would go to the principal about this, which is a good point after all, if anything you'd speak to a teacher first. Well, I don't know the kid very well, but I'm guessing at the school board meeting the kid's name will come up, and if he has connections with the principal, maybe the school board will also know the kids. I'm guessing maybe the kid is family with the principal or something, because he seemed really protective over that kid, and most reports take days to be sorted out. And shortly after, they came with a quick edit as well as some more further comments. So I've told both my mom and dad, and they are ticked off. They will be going to the school board in the morning. I will probably be posting an update tomorrow after my parents' school board meeting. And yeah, I'm 99% sure my dad has called a lawyer at this point. My parents are like yelling right now. Not like arguing, but they are so mad that they can't talk in a normal tone. They are just screaming. Yeah, my dad was calling one last night and started asking if we have grounds for a discrimination lawsuit. The lawyer said it was my word against the principal and the kid, but he thinks we still could sue. Now, do you think it is valid to be doing this kind of thing, though? Is the principal not just doing their job of applying discipline based on the information they've received? With that thought in mind, we come to another edit from the OP, giving some more information as to the altercation. I got some advice to say everything I actually said to the kid. This is what I said to the best that I remember, and I did apologize to the kid for my harsh language towards him. I said, "What the frick? No, I'm not covering my scars because it triggers you. I really don't care if it triggers you. I mean, you literally have seen them multiple times in the past and it never triggered you then. Don't be a freaking liar." Again, I apologized for calling him a liar and using such harsh language. God damn. Tell me you grew up in some very conservative Christian lifestyle, did that? You said frick twice, at most. This is extremely polarizing to my experience growing up in Australian school culture. There's a reason the CUNT word is spread around like just casual conversation. You learn it when you're 6 years old. So with that said, it seems rather clear that this is definitely some form of discrimination. At the very least, a principal jumping the gun far more than they needed to. And so later that day, we get another update after school. So my parents just got back from their meeting. To make a long story short, the principal probably will get fired. Kid that told me to cover up is being punished, and we aren't suing, lol. The school board said they will handle his employment status, which I'm guessing that's just their way of saying, "Don't sue us, we will fire him because we don't want to lose money." So yes, things are coming together in a nice, justified end, and wouldn't you know it, the reason the principal cared so much? Turns out the kid is the principal's nephew. And another quick update, So, principal wasn't at school a few days ago, and yesterday we were informed he was fired. So, huzzah! Well done! Truly evidential that if anything, you should trust and rely on your family the least when it comes to hearsay. Now look, for all we know, the principal did have a personal vendetta against the OP here, but I honestly wouldn't doubt if this was just the principal hearing something that their, nephew went through and decided to stamp their foot down again, because they could, because of nepotism. But either way, a definite abuse of power, so still an a-hole either way. We'll now move on to a story that began 3 months ago with some latest updates. The insanity of a mother-in-law who DNA tested our daughter and told my husband she isn't his. I'm a 45-year-old female, my husband is 48, and I have been together with him for 25 years. We have 3 kids, an 8-year-old female, a 15-year-old male, and a 17-year-old female. My husband and I have had a lot of trouble conceiving our daughter when we went through several years with no luck, and had seen a fertility doctor who had prescribed some medication to help with ovulation. We couldn't afford IVF, so we were going to try this last thing, and then look into adoption. Well, long story short, I was assaulted during a burglary while my husband was out with his brother. It was right when I was to be ovulating. At the hospital, I took EC, even though I knew it would undo all the hard work, the medication, and mean we wouldn't be able to have a baby of our own. But I couldn't risk getting pregnant with my R-words baby. Well, after a few months, I've been feeling off, sick, down. I figured I was just depressed after the assault and I hadn't been eating. But I soon found out I was pregnant. We were so excited until I went to my appointment and found out I was 15 weeks instead of the 5 or 6 weeks I thought I was. I had been having really irregular spotting or bleeding since the EC, so I didn't even imagine I was that for long. My husband and I were devastated because that meant there was so much uncertainty surrounding paternity. We had our ultrasound, and as soon as we saw the baby on the screen, I knew I couldn't have an abortion. And my husband didn't want to either. We talked and went back and forth about adoption and if the baby didn't end up being his or what we would do, and he said he didn't care about paternity, we just wouldn't find out. We decided to wait until our child was older to tell them, and they could decide if they wanted to find out themselves. Now, I will also note, at this point, my case was unsolved, but had been linked to other assaults and murders at the time. A few years ago, my rapist was caught, and a year ago, finally sentenced. At the hearing, I spoke, and my daughter and son knew about it, but I didn't go into details. But they knew I was attacked, but only knew it was before they were born. So that is essentially the backstory of all this. Now we move on to the crimes of the mother-in-law. Last Christmas, my mother-in-law bought my daughter, and only my daughter, a 23andMe for Christmas. I thought it was extremely weird, but didn't think too much of it. Thinking back, I don't know why I didn't see it for what it was. My daughter was equally confused and asked if I wanted to do it instead, since I'm adopted. I said sure, and just gave my daughter an Amazon gift card for the price of the test. My daughter brought it to my attention that my mother-in-law has been overly critical of my daughter in the last few months, commenting on her differences, saying things like, "I wonder where those eyes came from, hair, height." She even said to my daughter that she wonders why she's so skinny. My daughter looks exactly like me, the same eyes color, same hair color and texture, but she is quite a bit taller than me. I'm 5'8", she's 6 foot. I'm on the heavier side, so is my husband, and my daughter is extremely thin, but she is also an athlete. I've never had any reason to believe from looks alone that she is not my husband's daughter. After my daughter brought it to my attention how my mother-in-law was acting, I spoke with her, and she said, "Oh, she's just being sensitive." This was a couple of months ago. So a couple of nights ago, my mother-in-law invited my husband and I out for dinner and told us to leave the kids at home because she had something important to discuss with us. And we did. We went to a restaurant, we're eating, and my mother-in-law hands me and my husband 2 separate envelopes. My husband and I both look in the envelope, and they are DNA comparison results. I asked my mother-in-law what it was, and she said,
"The proof that you're the garbage I always knew you were."
I was extremely confused. I asked whose DNA she compared, and as I said that, I just knew. She said my husband and my daughter. My husband looked at me, and he looked so hurt and lost. I'll never get that image out of my head as long as I live. I called her a heartless "see you next Tuesday," and my husband and I left. I blocked her number from mine and my kids' phones, but figured my husband needed to make that decision on his own. My husband told me last night that my mother-in-law called him, and he stopped by after work at her house. She was telling my husband she's known for a while and suspected for a very long time, and that she wasn't sure how to approach the topic with him. My husband asked how she knew that. She said she overheard my brother-in-law talking to his wife and heard our daughter may not be his. My mother-in-law took that to mean that I cheated, so she did a DNA test. Last year, around the hearing, my husband got drunk and ended up mentioning the hearing and some details to my brother-in-law. Apparently that night while sleeping, he said, "I couldn't protect her, and what if she's not mine?" My husband was extremely drunk and did not remember doing this. My mother-in-law does not know that I was assaulted, but she does know there was a break-in and that I was attacked. Regardless, she kept trying to convince my husband to leave me. My husband told her that what she did was unforgivable and that he is going to cut her off. He's inconsolable. He's so upset that he told his mother to frick off and then told her that my attack was actually what it really was, and that's who our daughter's biological father is. It still makes me sick to say that. Well, she tried to apologize, but my husband told her he can't forgive her, and not to contact any of us. I told everyone that my mother-in-law DNA tested our daughter, and we were done with her. I have 7 siblings, 5 think I'm in the right, the other 2 and my brother-in-law can't believe what she did, but understand why, because she didn't have the entire story and assumed I wasn't being truthful to my husband. But even if I wasn't, I can't imagine being a parent so concerned with my child's relationship that I would go to those lengths to meddle. Thoughts from the gallery are saying, cutting her off completely and permanently is the only response appropriate for such a nasty, meddling piece of work. Anyone who takes her side can join her. She wanted to destroy your beautiful family for something that was none of her damn business. There could have been any number of reasons for such a result. Donor sperm, IVF mix-up, etc. She's also been treating your daughter differently based on her perceived paternity, and that's not on. She's never going to view her as family. And more people pile onto this thing, with it being the absolute truth that this mother was just waiting for an opportunity to pounce on it. Just think, this started during Christmas. This woman was trying to expose your family in Christmas?
Merry Christmas, granddaughter. Here's something to theoretically shatter your world, because I want confirmation as to whether or not I still owe you a present next year. You may technically be part of their family, but if you're not my blood, then I don't have to acknowledge you.
And of course, when that doesn't work for dear Granny Dearest, she has to instead make a spectacle about it in public. And as some other comments have mentioned, there's a bit of a susness about the fact of where she got these DNA samples from, because it's not like the husband gave her anything willingly. So could you even say it's a legitimate test? Well, about 3 months after that spectacle of a story, we move on to their update. First, thank you for all your support, and a big frick off to all the creeps and a-holes. To answer the most common questions, yes, we are no contact with my mother-in-law. I haven't talked to her since the dinner, and my husband hasn't spoken to her since a couple days after that. She knows I was assaulted, and attempted to apologize to my husband when he last spoke to her, but he basically told her to frick off, and he couldn't forgive her. We also had a good relationship up until this point, or so I thought. We hung out and did stuff together. I was just really hurtful that she told me at dinner when I asked what the envelope was, that it's proof that you're the trash I always knew you were, which I'm sure gives many women out there some personal comfort over the facade their own mother-in-laws give to them. People want to know why or how I could have kept a baby knowing the possibility of the rapist being the father, And the answer is that, even if I had known definitively that he was the father, my decision probably wouldn't have been different. She is as much a part of me biologically speaking as she is him, and after seeing her move around, I didn't desire an abortion, although it would have been nearly impossible for me to get one anyway where I lived. Although she was conceived in violence, she was raised in love, understanding, and acceptance. She is much more mine and my husband than my assaulter. Also, all he did was contribute DNA to her, nothing else. He's had no influence or part in her life and likely never will. I know DNA doesn't mean anything in the sense of who she is, but that doesn't diminish the devastation and anger I feel knowing he is responsible for any part of her. I'm honestly not sure why my husband and I were so blindsided, but I feel like you can convince yourself of anything given the right circumstances. Initially, we did feel it was likely his because of the year we went without conceiving, but when I got pregnant with my son pretty soon after my daughter, I know I convinced myself that not only was it a possibility, it was the only likely scenario. It's also not lost on me that the decision to keep her isn't something many people agree with, apparently, according to this post, but I know I made the right decision because my daughter is the most amazing girl, and I couldn't imagine my life without her. My daughter is doing well, and her relationship with myself and my husband hasn't changed at all. If anything, her relationship with my husband is much better. She makes an effort to spend more time with him, and they have many shared interests. My daughter said she isn't upset I didn't tell her. She's upset she had to find out when she wasn't truly ready, and she's happy I was able to share such a vulnerable, horrible event with her. My son now knows the specifics, and my youngest knows my daughter has a different dad, but not about my rape. Now, people also seem to be concerned with her genetics and how it affects her future health. She already had neonatal testing for genetic disorders. I am not a carrier of any autosomal recessive disorders, and she has had genetic testing for autosomal dominant ones and was negative. She also has had genetic testing for several different forms of cancer because of my biological family history. Anything else couldn't affect her until adulthood, and they are all almost heavily influenced by lifestyle, so they wouldn't be a concern until she's much older. I'm not sure what else to say, so I'll just once again reiterate how thankful I am for all the support. Now, some extra stuff for clarity and context. Sorry, this was a rant. I didn't go into a lot of specifics like I did in my initial post. Here is the link. Also, I didn't word it very well, but we retested, and my daughter and husband, because they never willingly gave my mother-in-law a sample, and we didn't want to ask her how she got the DNA. Also, my husband and I have been in therapy on and off since this happened 18 years ago. And my kids have been in therapy since they were in middle school. I make them go 4 times a year, and they can go more often if they desire. When this initially happened, I started having my daughter go weekly, and now she goes every other. Man, I swore I read a very similar story the other day, but the mother-in-law didn't end up testing the baby. A letter to an advice columnist was printed in the newspaper last week that was almost identical to this letter. Newspaper? They publish them online now, but they used to be on trees. Trees? Oh, they are in the outer world, the bright place where we do not go. Outer world? Bright place? I'm lost. Go up the stairs and wait for your eyes to adjust. You'll know it when they do.
You guys have an upstairs?
Instructions unclear. Duck's in my eye, but I'm adjusting. Your duck can reach your eye? Jealous. Yeah, okay, not very the most serious comments to read after such a harrowing story, but I feel like we needed the break. But yeah, if it ain't clear, I think it's agreed with some of these comments that this is a case of toxic mother-in-law who are so in love with their sons, it's sickening. They want them all to themselves and will hurt anyone that's in her place. A classic case of emotional incest where even the slightest possibility, the most theoretical reaching of a Mr. Fantastic arm that they could be a cheater to your son, well,
We have to take it as an absolute certainty.
We'll now bounce back to Am I the A-hole with a two-parter story that begins a bit funny to being downright creepy. Am I the a-hole for walking out on a double date my friend set up with him, his girlfriend, and a girl I had already rejected before? The cast is me, 25 male, Joe, 26, and Jane, 24 female. To give you a little background to this situation, I met Jane through Joe's girlfriend at her birthday party last year. At first, Jane was fun to talk to, but not even an hour later, Jane was really into me and tried really badly to hit on me during the party, which pretty much ruined my time there, as the feeling was not mutual in the slightest bit. Also, at the time, I was already with someone. So, the first impression I got from Jane was that she was clingy, annoying, and just wouldn't stop bothering me. Unfortunately for me, she became part of my larger friend group because she is part of Joe's girlfriend's friend group. That is a mouthful, sheesh. And because me and Joe hang out a lot, and I am also friends with his girlfriend, I pretty much run into her at minimum twice a month. So essentially she is great tea for your girlfriend and you to vent about later when you get home. So, first time Jane asked me out was a month after the party. I informed her I was with someone and not interested. She tried again 2 months later when I broke up with my then girlfriend. Again, I declined her advances and told her I was not interested. I got into a new relationship not long after, but unfortunately, she and I broke up about 2 months ago. Since then, as you might have anticipated, Jane has asked me out again. I said no again. I don't know, man, I don't think you're being that clear. Well, that brings us to this week. Everything has been opening up here, and Joe had been trying to fix me up with a friend of his girlfriend, and would not tell me who. He is well aware of me having rejected Jane multiple times, and the fact I am not interested in her. He knows this in detail. After a lot of what he calls convincing and I call whining, I had no interest in dating anytime soon. I relented and decided to agree to this double date idea of his. We agree on meeting at Joe's apartment, and lo and behold, Joe, his girlfriend, and Jane are occupying the dinner table, obviously intending for my date to be Jane. I honestly just got so goddamn angry that I couldn't even get a single word out, turned around and left. So I have been bombarded with texts and calls about how much of a D-bag I am, and how terribly I hurt Jane, and so on, and I am just like, I literally rejected her like 3 times. I am not interested in her. You knew that. Your girlfriend knew that. Our entire friend group has a running joke about obsessive Jane, for frick's sake, so literally everyone knows it. So am I the a-hole? Well, top comment runs to Natar, but your friend obviously is. Like, setting someone up with someone who rejected that person is cruel, not the fact that you turned around. I would honestly do the same. On the other side of things though, someone asks for more info, bringing up a good point that this may be a case of just constant miscommunication. I mean, we do have to ask, is Jane fully certain you've been rejecting her this entire time? How exactly are you rejecting her? Are you being blunt as you can be? Or are you just trailing her along, awkwardly bantering back with her to hope that she picks up a signal? For an example, when you make your way with rejections, you don't say something like, "No, I am seeing someone." It may sound cruel, but "no, thank you" is actually a lot kinder. Especially with the clingier types, when they hear a reason along with the rejection, they believe that if it weren't for that reason, you'd have said yes to their advances. In fact, Jane demonstrated this by reaching out every time you were single. She didn't hear no, she heard "not right now." And that's a good point. She could have ended up saying this to all of your friends, making them think that that's what she thinks as well. Because as easy it is to play the fun game of how she's being like an incel male who just can't take no for an answer, she also is being exactly like them in how you defend their reasoning, where she thinks you're rejecting her based on your circumstances, not based on who she is as a person and how you don't find any of that appealing or attractive. Of course, I don't say that to excuse her and allow her to constantly harass you, or in this sense just constantly offer to take you out on a date, but it does put an explanation behind her as not being someone who just doesn't respect you. Overall, just saying that you should just be certain what you've been saying has been absolutely crystal clear, and not a case of someone just getting themselves blindsided this entire time. After all, it is a common thought that most people reject each other based on the circumstances they're in themselves, and hey, if you just happen to drop into a circumstance where you're having dinner with Jane and a bunch of other friends, maybe you would feel more comfortable around her. Maybe you just needed to give her a chance. If you can't tell, that was a sarcastic comment. I don't think that's actually a legitimate reason. But with a not the a-hole judgment, we move over to the update. At any rate, like I said, here it goes. It turns out that some of the more pessimistic of you were right. Jane was being obsessive and stalkerish, and it sort of all came tumbling down on her at that point. A week or so after I made my post, she decided to message me. Well, it came down to her not understanding why I was showing interest in her and then refused to date her. But I never showed interest in her beyond basic friendliness. A wall of text dedicated to thrashing my previous relationships and calling them all sorts of names, specifically pointing out how I dated the wrong girls, and a weird rant about how everyone agreed me and her were meant to be, which just isn't the case. Like I said in my previous post, there is a running joke in our friends group about how weird she is, which is that alone very questionable as to the state of the friendships you all have with each other, where you treat a friend of yours as a weirdo and make them the butt of all your jokes. Now, you might think this is something that can be expected, something that just happens, an outlet for her of sorts, except she sent it from the wrong account. See, I had become internet friends with a person in the past month or two. Me and her would game together, chat from time to time. You know, the usual organic internet friend situation. And the messages concerning our date was sent from this account. Turns out she had literally used this alias to infiltrate my internet friend group and keep tabs on me of sorts. Obviously, this freaked me the frick out. I took screenshots of what she said and sent me, and afterwards blocked all accounts that I knew now she was using. I followed that up by sharing everything in our friend Discord and in our friend WhatsApp group, so everyone could see, which resulted in her being kicked from both, and I later got a call from Joe full-on apologetic, telling me he had no idea. He knew he shouldn't have done it, but that his girlfriend was being pressured by Jane. Turned out, Jane had literally been bitching at her for months to arrange something like this, and she finally caved. Again, creepy stuff. I told him that I needed some time, as he really fricked me over big time, and I didn't trust him anymore as a result. While Jane has been shunned by all friends, she still contacted me twice, once to apologize, which quickly turned into a weird schmidt where she started talking about us. She seems convinced there is an us, and I am interested in another time just to curse at me, both from random accounts. I am not sure where to go from here, and I am still pretty shook up. Gallery at this point just goes into serious legal mode, suggesting that you need to document everything with police. When the stalker has created an imaginary relationship like that, they will escalate. The cops will likely not do anything, but documenting makes it easier to get a restraining order. Yep, there are the stalkers that want a relationship, stalkers that think they deserve a relationship, and those that believe you are already in a relationship. All three are dangerous, but the level of risk and likelihood of physical attack increases with each one. And agreed with Petey Ball here, the thing about stalkers is that they're super selfish. They're absolutely convinced that you would be better off with them, that you want to be with them. You just need to realize it, and if they just say the right thing, you'll suddenly come around. Because of course you will. Nothing you say or do means anything to them. Only what they know is true. They are victims of their own confirmation bias, which obviously makes them the prime partner to have in life. One who doesn't consider your opinion on things whatsoever and only agrees with what they've already believed in. Either way, glad that the OP has managed to expose her like this. It's one of those things where it's been a very necessary shaming. Hope they're safe, and I look forward to the wedding. Anyway, that's the end of today's stories. Thank you as always for watching, making it to the end of this video. Congratulations if you did. You are winning yourself a free plant that is dead because I didn't do the watering right. I forgot to. Anyway, be good. Remember to drink water and possibly water your plants too. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.